Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the second week of our Florida Innovation Summer Speakers Series. We're so happy to have you join us and happy to have Dr. Thomas and James join us again as well. I'm Liz Doyle. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of Florida House on Capitol Hill. For those of you who don't know, Florida is the only state that has an embassy in Washington, D.C. We work really hard to connect, celebrate, and champion Florida to the world, and are more than happy to welcome you to Florida House anytime you're visiting the nation's capital. We would love to see you. For this series, we're so happy to partner with the Cade Museum and the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame to bring you, like I said, to what is now the second of our series of 6 presentations this summer. I want to introduce you to Jamie Spurrier. She's the program manager from the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame. And Jamie, if you would say a few words of welcome.
Thank you so much, Liz. And I want to just also take a minute to thank our partners at Florida House on Capitol Hill, as well as the Cade Museum for Creativity and Invention for partnering with us again this year on the Florida Innovation Summer Speaker Series. We're also so excited about our speaker today, Dr. Sylvia Wilson Thomas, who leads research and innovation at the University of South Florida. And she herself is a groundbreaking inventor. So she's the perfect person to talk about the importance of breaking boundaries in the efforts to advance innovation. At the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame, we are also committed to boundary breaking innovation. Our mission is to encourage individuals of all ages and backgrounds to strive toward the betterment of society through continuous groundbreaking innovation by supporting a culture of creativity, one that fuels innovation, drives economic growth, and encourages investment in Florida. We're looking to create a culture shift here to celebrate our state's innovators the way we celebrate national heroes and hopefully inspire others to make their own discoveries. The Florida Inventors Hall of Fame is a statewide initiative located at the University of South Florida. To date, we have inducted 58 remarkable inventors who collectively hold over 4,000 patents. Some of our inductees include Thomas Edison, as well as Hollywood icon Hedy Lamarr, Sarah Blakely, who's the founder of Spanx, and Dr. Robert Cade, the inventor of Gatorade. We invite you to come visit us anytime online or in person. You can also tour our museum, which is free to the public and located at the USF Tampa campus. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Carmen Hurtado, the Senior Product Development Manager at the Cade Museum, where they are creating cutting-edge innovation programs among many other amazing projects. Carmen.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm excited to be here today speaking on behalf of the Cade Museum for Creativity and Invention to kick off today's program. First, I'd like to thank Florida House and Florida Inventors Hall of Fame for being such incredible partners. The Cade Museum's mission is to transform communities through inspiring and equipping future inventors, entrepreneurs, and visionaries. The Cade Museum is named for Mary Cade and her husband, Dr. James Robert Cade, who is a doctor, a musician, and a poet, and the leading inventor of Gatorade. The museum is designed to promote the development of inventive mindset, which the Cade calls inventivity. Through a proprietary inventive education framework, we create outreach programs, exhibits, and museum experiences that spark wonder and teach STEM concepts through the lens of invention. One of our marquee programs, the Cade Prize, awards inventors and entrepreneurs in Florida, Alabama, and Georgia that are addressing critical issues in the Southeast. This year, the Cade Prize will award $63,000 in seed capital prizes. We are accepting applications for the Cade Prize through the end of the month. More information is available on our website, cademuseum.org. Now, I'd like to welcome back James D. Virgilio, our moderator for today's program. He's one of the country's leading fiduciary investors and financial planners, as well as the founder of Cachon Diaz and Virgilio Wealth Management. James has been featured on the world's largest news networks, was a Gator 100 nominee, and a 40 Gators Under 40 award winner. James is also an adjunct professor at the University of Florida, the co-host of Gator Nation Football Podcast, the co-host of Radio Cade Podcast, and on the board of directors at the Cade Museum. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation and we'll pass it over to James. Thank you.
Thanks, Carmen. Thanks again for joining us today. And our guest today is Dr. Sylvia Wilson Thomas. She has an extensive and wonderful bio. I'm going to give you a little bit on her now before she gets to tell us about herself. She is currently the Vice President for Research and President and CEO of the USF Research Foundation. She's a professor in electrical engineering, a senior member of the National Academy of Inventors, and a fellow of the American Institute for Medical and Biological Engineering. She's dedicated to STEM education, serving as an advisor for the Society of Women Engineers and National Society of Black Engineers, a member of the Board of Directors for Black Girls Code, and a Florida Senate appointee to the Florida Education Fund Board of Directors. She's mentored well over 150 students, and Dr. Sylvia Wilson Thomas leads the Advanced Membrane and Materials Bio and Integration Research Lab at USF, where she conducts research on diversity, equity, and inclusion of underrepresented minorities and women. She's been recognized in local and national news and publications. Welcome to the program, Sylvia. We're super happy to have you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, James. Great to be here. And I am very thankful for the Florida House, the Cade Museum, and Florida Inventors Hall of Fame for this concept and for bringing this initiative forward so we can begin to talk more inclusive about innovation and as a nation, looking at it locally, regionally, specifically for the University of South Florida and how we move forward.
Yeah, let's start right there. Obviously, so much of your life revolves around innovation. Why is innovation important to you?
Because it helps change lives. Innovation, if we, think about it, it can have and take on so many forms for so many different people in so many different walks of life. And so for me, innovation is how I can help someone's quality of life become better. And for others, innovation may mean something else. But the things that we do in terms of our creativity, how it spans across products, how it spans across just the very simple things in life, we have to harness that. And so for me, it's all about how we can help society become better, how we can improve quality of life, and then make a difference for future generations.
Now, directly at the USF Research Foundation, tell us a little bit about exactly how that's happening. I know you're kind of working on what you just said there on a daily basis. What does that look like? What is the foundation able to do?
Wow, huge question, right? In terms of the University of South Florida and our research and innovation efforts, it is huge across some of those grand challenges that we're seeing as a nation. Whether, we're looking at sustainability issues, we're looking at big data and data analytics and how it's applied to fintech or healthcare, looking at our coastal areas and the impact there, looking at, of course, healthcare. So all of those particular grand challenges that we're dealing with as a people, we're addressing at the University of South Florida through our research and through our innovation. And we encourage and promote that process by encouraging our student, our faculty, our independent researchers to be innovative. So we want to nurture that creativity. And at the University of South Florida, we take that, help support that creativity and move it through the process where we file patents and disclosures and look at licensing. And then we move that into the product phase and try and monetize and commercialize it. And then we also go even a step further and we encourage our students, our faculty to, begin startup companies. And so through our research park and our innovation ecosystem, we can support all of that, small business, SBIRs the STTRs, so they get the small business loans. They establish their companies, and then they can grow. We can help nurture that through that ecosystem, and they can grow into, the research park, and then even grow beyond that where they have their own building. And so it becomes, again, a process and a system that we're encouraging and building and strengthening here at the University of South Florida. And that does a lot for us in terms of, how we're impacting community, our national reputation, what we're doing in terms of institutional excellence and strengthening the research infrastructure here at the University of South Florida, which is very critical in the state of Florida and the nation, and internationally as well.
Sure. So it's a start to finish support system. As you mentioned, early stage, middle stage, late stage, whatever the case may be, there's help provided to innovators.
Yeah,
what does an innovator look like, Sylvia? What do the innovators you're working with look like? Are there commonalities? Are they all over the place? Like, what makes an innovator?
Close your eyes, and whatever you can imagine, that's an innovator. So and we want, those who are, K through 12, and, the community partners we work with, the industry partners we work with, inclusive of our faculty, staff, and students, to understand anyone can be an innovator. Anyone can, look at their lives and apply what they know about their lives, the needs that they see in their lives, and they can be innovators. A lot of, from the institutional or the academic standpoint, in the lab, and people hear me say this all the time, we get that aha moment, right? And we're in the lab and we're making these discoveries, but one of the things I want to mention here is, what's fueling our approach to make those discoveries and to be creative. For me, some of my work is looking at glucose sensing. The reason for that is because, members of my family, specifically my aunt, is diabetic and, has other healthcare issues. And so in looking at that, I wanted to be a part of the solution. So, we filed patents on glucose sensors that were implantable because it was going to make a difference in someone that I cared about. So a lot of our researchers are driven by that passion to actually impact people that they know. So when we talk about an innovator, again, close your eyes and they can look like any and everything and be very creative in the things that we address.
Is innovation a culture that needs to be built? Does it exist on its own? How do we foster that, what you just mentioned? How do we foster or nurture or encourage that spirit, or can we even impact that?
Well, I will say this, James, that as a nation, as a country, we understand that we have to foster innovation. So that goes to the Bipartisan Innovation Act, right? Where industry, university, national labs, they're coming together so we can talk about being competitive as a nation for innovation. And so, yes, we do have to nurture it, but there are still some challenges, right? Because we talk about barriers. Jamie talked about barriers earlier. Well, there are some barriers that we do have to address, right? When it comes to communities that are not exposed to, what is innovation? How do we define innovation? So you have some communities that have not been exposed or not been brought into the fold in terms of harnessing their creativity, harnessing what is going on in their communities that will also build innovation capacity across the United States, and again, impacting those internationally. So yes, we have to continue to harness innovation. We have to continue to educate and support, nurture, encourage, mentor those who are in the innovation space and those who are outside of the innovation space, and bring them into the fold to, again, lead to enhanced competitiveness for the United States, for addressing some of our societal challenges. You know, for instance, you know, there's a shortage of semiconductor chips. And so, you know, some of my experience has been in that realm as a manufacturing engineer and an R&D researcher for Bell Labs. And so when we talk about the shortage of semiconductor chips, that impacts multiple technologies and multiple, you know, industries. And so as a nation, we have to continue to drive that technology and be innovative of how we can address that particular challenge and some of those shortages. And so, again, innovation can be defined in several different ways. And we have to continue to be innovative, creative, and impactful and implement those innovations.
All right, let's dive into something you had mentioned a few minutes ago. Imagine here, and you may be able to set a specific stage for us, a community that has not been exposed to innovation, or as you mentioned, maybe they don't really know or understand what they're capable of. What does it look like to go into a community like that and then fuel them or give them the resources, or basically change the culture of, you can problem solve these things you see in your community, you can do that? What does that look like?
It takes several, you know, from my point of view, it will take several different avenues to do that. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, when we're embracing communities, it's really important that we understand what the needs are in the community. It's really important that we understand and have a conversation with the community in regards to what the wants, needs, you know, resources, and what is actually available in that particular area. And so gaining understanding is one particular avenue. Another avenue is, in fact, bringing in some of those resources. We have an entire world that's virtual, right? So you may have in some of those communities, they may not, in fact, have crossed that digital divide, right? So we also have to think about that. But you can have a virtual platform. We can partner with national federal agencies to initiate programs that actually go into those areas and do things that are fun and integrative, and, you know, allow those communities to see what that space looks like. In addition to that, you know, we can build programs that offer shared, right, royalties to those communities. So not only are we in embracing them and engaging them in this innovation space, but we're also helping to infuse, you know, dollars into those communities to help sustain the innovation, to help sustain the creativity that may come out of a community organization that's working in that community. So there are several phases and several avenues that we would have to go through, and in order to, you know, have those conversations about innovation within those communities. And I think communities are eager and they're excited to be part of the conversation, and they want to help and to offer solutions to academia, to industry, to national labs, to governmental agencies in terms of some of these grand challenges that we're dealing with as a nation.
Now, you yourself have multiple patents. Can you tell us a story or two, first about something that was really difficult that you had to overcome as an innovator, and then secondly, maybe what you would consider to be one of your greatest successes when it comes to you yourself creating or innovating something?
What did I have to get over? That's a big one. So the intimidation, right? The intimidation that what you're creating is not worthy of a patent. The intimidation that, you know, the things that you are studying and you're putting into that effort are not going to stand the mustard. But I tell my students, and I encourage all of my classes, all of my colleagues in research, I was once told, when in doubt, disclose. So don't even think about all of those other things. Disclose and file the patent disclosure. And the experts, right, will review all of the patents, let you know where your thought process stands in terms of that patent process. But I think it's really critical that we don't deny the world the brilliance that comes out of, you know, people's creativity and what they're doing to make a difference. And so I mentioned earlier, you know, one of the patents that we actually have several patents toward the glucose sensor. And so I talked about my motivation for doing that and, you know, trying to understand how we can make that technology better and how we can address some concerns that were in that industry in terms of the lifespan of glucose sensors. That technology has matured tremendously for the industry. And there are, you know, a couple of other innovations that we have that are visionary innovations. And, you know, one of them is, you know, if we talk about a hydroelectric system, where you have this huge wheel that's turned by water, right? Well, our vision was, and we have a patent on this process, is to shrink that turbine into a mini notch turbine, where we have that patent where the application is to actually power implantable devices. So we would implant that turbine into your body. It could be turned by any fluid flow or airflow in your body. And we would convert that mechanical energy into electrical energy to power, say, a pacemaker. Well, why is that important? Because when babies are implanted with pacemakers, over the course of their life, they have to go through multiple operations because of the battery life. So how can we address that? How can we, you know, help in terms of their quality of life? Well, our mini notch turbine will help power those particular devices for several years beyond a battery life. And so it's those types of issues that I like to say I continue to support in the Office of Research and Innovation at the University of South Florida. And I continue to support through my research. And it's those types of activities through innovation where we're going to change the world, where we're going to make life better for those. Another innovation that we have is a water filtration, where we're working with cactus mucilage, and we're creating membranes using cactus mucilage, using nature, right? And we have a patent on a nanofiber membrane where you can use it to filter water, You can also use it for its medicinal properties in terms of wound healing, tissue scaffolding. So not only when we talk about innovation and we talk about products, but those products could have multiple use. And then you can have innovation, right, that is licensed across trademarks and copyrights and licensing and, you know, data licensing. And so we also encourage those who are in the arts, right, to be creative about their innovation and how that can impact the world. And so it's fun. Let's put it this way. It's a lot of fun because if you think about all of the things that we go through in life, and if you sit and you think about, oh, well, what is it that I can do to make that better for someone? You'd be surprised of all the things you can actually come up with.
Yeah, and that is one of the most beautiful things about innovation in general, as you mentioned, is that the large majority of people that get into it do not do it because they're thinking, I want to make a ton of money. They do it because they're passionate about solving a problem or improving a process or creating something that has not been created to solve a problem, right? And that is, I think, as you mentioned, really a beautiful thing about innovation in general. It does improve the world faster than anything else can do it, because you're right there solving the problem. You may see it first. Now, if you have any questions for Dr. Wilson Thomas, you can go ahead and put those in the chat. We'll take those in a few minutes. But in the meantime, I want to ask you another couple of questions here. And sure. Sylvia, commercialization is often the hardest part of innovation. People have ideas, they may get some friends and family money, they may get a grant, but there tends to be this overwhelming sense of dread. I will never have enough money to be able to take my idea to market. So why do it? How do you help people overcome that kind of feeling of it just is too expensive, it's too hard? How do I raise money? I don't know what I'm doing. How do you help them overcome that challenge?
So we partner, with those who are in the innovation space. Our USF Connect and Incubator allows, again, startup companies to go through their prototypes, to look at how they can market their products, look at what it looks like to have IP for those products, right? So in those partnerships, we also engage those who are in the field of commercialization. So, we talk with consultants. Our National Academy of Inventors offers workshops and seminars to talk about what, a partnership would look like with an existing entity, right? Someone who's in that area, in that industry, and a possible startup, and how we can leverage that partnership for commercialization. And also with our consultants and looking at the IP to see in which particular area or sector of a market, right, that particular IP can have potential in terms of its commercialization. So there are several phases in which you have to go through. And again, it is very difficult. And it takes several years in terms of that maturity, in terms of, particularly if you have to go through, say, the FDA and get, right, that clearance. And so we offer, again, through our partners, with our partners, the opportunity to be educated on that commercialization and how we can provide different resources to make that happen for, say, our startups, for our faculty, students, and also our portfolio.
Yeah, it's often said, and maybe too often said or too cliche, but it's really true when it comes to innovation, right? Is that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with just one step. Yes. And I think, as you mentioned, you take the step. I have an idea. I'm interested in something. You take step one. Then if you get to step 2 or step 3, then they meet you. And then you say, well, here's what step 4, 5, and 6 look like. And then they meet someone else. And here's what 7, 8, and 9 looks like. And at the end of the day, you have a network of people that have taken these steps ahead of you that are able to work with you, as you mentioned, to take something. And that is what's really neat about innovation, is that I've interviewed hundreds of innovators, and not a single one of them has ever said, I did this by myself, right? There was always a legion of people and organizations that assisted them. And it is a community, it's a true community, right, of people. And of course, I know you champion that across the board, and that you talked a lot about it today. And I think that's something that obviously is one of the best things about joining the innovation community, is it's a family of people working together to make the world better. And with that, I want to ask a question here. What do you enjoy most about working with the innovators, specifically in the state of Florida? The state of Florida has a lot of different, reputations across the country. It's been changing a lot in the past couple of years, but what about the state of Florida makes it a really great place for innovation?
And that's a huge question too, right? Because in the state of Florida, again, from the state level to the local level, and also at the individual university level, we're promoting innovation throughout the state of Florida. We are being recognized on the national level as a place to, in fact, come to be innovative. Just here in Tampa, right? We have an innovation district that is just booming in terms of new companies and them bringing their new innovation to the Tampa Bay region. And the University of South Florida is supporting that. And so that's happening across the state of Florida. And so we're supporting, nurturing, mentoring that innovation. So at the national level, we can be recognized and be competitive with other states. And being able to do that, the state of Florida, through our Board of Governors, is also supporting that innovation and how we move it forward.
Specifically regarding patent of yours, the work you've mentioned multiple times today with regards to the glucose research, the question here is, does that mean potentially that you'll be able to check your blood sugar on a device, maybe a cell phone or an iWatch, without pricking your fingers several times a day? Or are you working on something maybe that's outside the scope of actually pulling the glucose level from the blood?
So if you look at some of the current technology to date, you can do that, right? So they have the glucose sensors that do continuous monitoring, and they can pass that to your cell phone, and you can collect that data. One of the specific issues that we were focused on was an implantable device, first of all, right? So again, you wouldn't have to continue to prick or have the needle stuck in your arm. And then you would, in fact, be able to continuously monitor your glucose level and the changes that you were seeing. And so we also were focused on the power capacity. And so, that's getting into some of the technology of the device, but we were also focused on that as well.
Makes sense. And as an electrical engineer, of course, there's many things that your brain might think of that me, as more of a finance person, may not think of, but I've appreciated you explaining them in straightforward terms. When you start saying a wheel and then we make it smaller,
Yes, exactly.
That's quality, and that's helpful. And when it comes to championing STEM education, which I know is one of the forefronts of how you spend your time, what's the most rewarding thing about that? Because I'm imagining, maybe incorrectly, that sometimes you're speaking to people that have never considered themselves a person who would be interested in science or technology. And then maybe by the end, this light bulb goes off that it's something they could do. Just tell us a little bit about that.
So one of my passions, as you say, James, is encouraging, younger generations to look at STEM from a standpoint that through a STEM education, it can, you know, the mindset that you actually develop in STEM allows you to pursue any avenue, whether you want to go to law school, whether you want to go and get a PhD, if you want to go to medical school. That STEM education, in my perspective, gives you that discipline to pursue those particular areas. So a lot of my passion is encouraging, you know, young individuals to actually pursue those areas. And why is that important to me? Because and I go back again to creativity, if you go and you just expose them to the possibility of what they can do with the STEM education, you know, their eyes light up and it becomes really exciting because they realize the possibilities and they understand that, wow, I could really do this. Or this is something that I can use this to make a difference in my life, in my family's life. And so my passion, of course, you know, I've done a lot of work with young girls, right? Working with the Girl Scouts, the Girls Collaborative, Black Girls Code. And so, you know, one of the reasons for me really harnessing in on that is because, of course, I'm an African-American female. It's obvious, right? And so one of the things that really spurred me to do STEM was, you know, my father, the late Dr. Eddie Wilson, and my mother, Verna Wilson, who still lives in Itabena, Mississippi. And it was a very quaint, small town in Mississippi. And so you talk about innovation, right? We were not necessarily exposed to what they call innovation today. And so they encouraged me to pursue a career in engineering, you know, a few years ago. We won't say how many years ago, when it was not necessary, well, when it was coming on the stage as being popular, right? And so I have been so fulfilled by that career pursuit that I want others to experience that and be fulfilled by it, and, you know, not be intimidated by it, and understand that, you know, you can embrace it and you can use it to propel you into other careers. And so I continue on that mission. And I continue to, you know, work with, you know, different entities like AMROC here in Tampa, and encouraging their young inventors to just continue to be innovative in the things that they're doing. And so I think it's really important for all of us to do that, to, you know, reach back and touch someone, a group of young people that are just really eager to understand the world that we live in. They're eager to make a difference. Of course, they're a little bit different than we are, right? Because there are a lot of things that they have at their disposal that we didn't have. And so how do we use all of the technology that has been developed, all of the virtual spaces that have been developed, to allow them to contribute to innovation? So that's going to be really important. I'm going to continue to strive to do that.
That's a wonderful mission. And really to be human is to create. And I think to your point,
I love that.
Sometimes we have to inspire that. I think that can be unfortunate, because it really is, again, to be a human, creating is something that comes natural to us. It's something we want to do. And you want to foster that. You want people to know that they are capable of changing the world around them. They're capable of thinking up brilliant ideas. And oftentimes when you think of the idea, it seems too simple. And that's kind of how you know it's brilliant, because others have not thought of it. And that's often what happens. But Sylvia, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you. Of course, you can find Sylvia's contact information with a simple Google search. She's all over the internet. You can find many ways to contact her should you want to reach out. and get in touch. Thanks again for the time today. It's been a fascinating discussion. Sylvia, thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you, James. And I just want to say one last thing, that it's all about purpose, right? So finding that purpose in your life and moving forward to seek that purpose.
Well said. Liz, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, James and Sylvia, Dr. Wilson Thomas. We so appreciate you being with us today. It was really such an amazing discussion, and I think all of us can agree that we learned a lot. And James, we really appreciate you leading this Breaking Boundaries discussion as usual. I thought your questions were great, but Dr. Wilson Thomas, I just loved hearing you talking about inspiring communities and people and getting them excited and motivated to bring their contributions into the forefront. And I was also excited to hear about the work that you're doing at USF, that not only are you encouraging people to be innovative and walking them through the patent process, but then you're also going another step further and getting them to actually start businesses and become part of the economic engine in Florida. I know one thing that I'll take away from this is when you said innovators have a passion to impact people that they know. And I think that's something that will carry on through the rest of the series. So I hope you all will join us again next week. Thanks again to our partners at the Cade Museum, as well as at the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame. Our guest speaker next week will be the co-founder of the Cade Museum, Phoebe Cade Miles, and we will look forward to hearing her talk about innovation education. Thanks again, everybody. See you next week.